Welcome to another edition of Elevating with Marcia. I'm your host, Marcia Hawkins, and in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about the unorganized. All right, everybody, welcome back to the program. Yeah, we're going to be talking about being unorganized. I did a whole podcast on how to get yourself organized, and I realized that maybe I needed to talk about some of the characteristics of people who are not that organized and see if we can find a way to have you address some of those issues so that the other podcasts would actually be more relevant to you, given that you could then incorporate some of those strategies that I talked about. So today, if you're unorganized, this is the podcast for you. All right, first thing I'm going to talk about is your finances. Do you walk around with a checkbook in your purse, your briefcase, your back pocket, no register, not really sure, maybe you do have a banking app on there that keeps you kind of organized, but I don't know if it's necessarily prudent to be walking around with a checkbook. You really don't need it. Most things you can do, with technology, you don't really need to have sometimes you do, albeit, sometimes you definitely need to have that paper check, but I'm not sure you need to be walking around with it unless you're traveling and you need it for that purpose. But I find that debit cards and having your checkbook at the ready sometimes can create impulse buying. So sometimes it's better to not travel with a checkbook and not travel with a debit card. Again, I did a whole series on one podcast about utilizing a credit card and paying it off every month. I find that it is far more organized. You're far more organized and far less vulnerable to fraud if you utilize a credit card. So travel with a credit card, leave the checkbook, leave the debit card at home. I find it causes more problems than it solves, and I think it's a great strategy to incorporate into your life. I've watched people pull their checkbook out of their purse, and there's coffee stains on it. They've got checks missing. They can't remember where they wrote them. I can't even go there. So really take a look at that and see if that's something that you absolutely have to do. Now, if you are an anti-credit card, anti-debit card, and you do everything by check, I totally get that. But I think there's an easier way to do that. If you're not disciplined with a credit card, maybe that's not a good strategy for you. But I'm hoping through the podcast you'll understand that if you can discipline yourself and you can get yourself organized and you can see the value in doing it this way, it is far more effective and far more organizing than flying by the seat of your pants all the time and walking around, like I said, with a checkbook, debit card, and not really understanding where your finances are. I think it's in one of those things that if you can just start to get in the habit of doing things a different way, after 60, 90 days, it will become habit for you. And you will find that it saves you time, not only time, but it will save you money as well. So I at the last podcast, I put a few links in there to Rocket Money, Mint.com, and a credit card that I use. And I can tell you it's one of the best things I ever did. It's the only card I use. I have others, but I do not use them. I specifically work off my card. Again, I'll put the link into this podcast if you want to try to get yourself organized. Print your reports at the end of the year. It is a win-win if you can get yourself disciplined to doing that. Highly recommend that you do that. As far as your finances go, how many people are running through the Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru once or twice a day? Astronomical. I mean, I did the math on it at $12, which I would say is roughly about 2 cups, 2 lattes, whatever. There are some drinks there that are way more expensive, but let's just round it up to 12. You're basically utilizing $4,380 of your money every year. If you're a twice a day Starbucks visitor, that's really what you're looking at. Can you imagine if you invested that money into, if you put that into a mutual fund, if you put that into a interest-bearing CD account, money market account, whatever, or if you stuck it under your mattress, for crying out loud, you're still going to be up to $4,000 every year by not doing that. Albeit if you travel, I get it. If you need to get a cup of coffee out, totally understand that, but really not necessary when you think about it. It is so easy to brew a cup of coffee at your home and save that money. And just imagine what you can do with that. So just, maybe go through your checking account statement, your credit card statement, and really look at where you are spending your money. I know a lot of people that go out to lunch every day rather than pack their lunch. Not sure why you would want to do that. I like to take my CSR out to lunch every Tuesday. We get together. We're in the office the same day. But that's just something I do for her as a benefit. I enjoy spending time with her, and I want to do that for her. But any other day, you would never catch me. Unless I'm meeting with a client for lunch, you would not see me dropping $30 on a lunch that I could make at home or eat at home or bring with me. Complete waste of money. Again, you have to look at it. If you're making $30 an hour, you have to work an entire hour to cover your lunch every day. I just don't think that's worth it. The juice is not worth the squeeze with this, in my opinion. It's so easy to throw, some greens into a Rubbermaid container or whatever, and throw in some, cherry tomatoes and some cucumbers, mix up some salad dressing, whatever, and bring it with you. Maybe grab an apple, whatever it is that you happen, maybe some crackers and some hummus or whatever it is that you like to eat for lunch. But what a waste of money. If you work 5 days a week, and on average, I would say 30, especially if you're doing sit down, but even if you're doing fast food, let's drop it down to $18. If you're doing that every day and you're working 5 days a week, and let's say you're working 46 weeks out of the year, again, you're over $4,000 just on eating lunch out. That's not including the cup of coffee you got on the way in, and maybe you grabbed a bagel, maybe you grabbed a muffin. Completely not worth it. Completely not worth it. Now we're upwards over $8,000, almost into $9,000 that you're blowing on coffee and lunch. Completely not worth it. Once in a while, treat yourself. Absolutely. Really not thinking it's worthwhile, though, on a daily basis. I know when I've gone to the gas station and filled up my car and I'm watching people go in and they're walking out with a coffee culotta or a venti latte with a muffin or, an egg bite or whatever it happens to be that you're grabbing. I just think you need to look at it. Go through your credit card, debit card statement and take a look at that and add it up. A friend of mine used to do this. She helped people get their credit score up, and she would go through their checking account statement with them. And she said, and I couldn't believe this statistic, that on average, that the average debit card transaction at, McDonald's or, whatever it happened to be, it was like $35, and they were doing it every single day. And they're wondering why their credit score has been impacted. So again, I think that those are just two really easy things to tackle. And I also believe that it contributes to you being unorganized and, having, not getting up and making your lunch or grabbing something for breakfast prior to leaving your home or going to the office. And if you work from home, I know people that work from home and they do DoorDash. Unbelievable. I could not imagine someone showing up my door for lunch and delivering me lunch when I have a refrigerator full of food. Makes no sense to me, but I think it's something that you need to look at. So easy, so easy to pack your lunch, make your lunch, do whatever you need to do. And the money, we're looking really close to $9,000 a year that you're saving. So something definitely need to look at. I also talked about rocketmoney.com, mint.com, and utilizing a credit card versus a debit card. A debit card is much harder to recover from fraud. Credit card, much easier. Highly recommend. I will put those links in this podcast as well. So those are just a couple of the financial pieces. As far as, getting your bills paid and I really want you to take a look at your daily habits towards money. I've gone in, if you opened my wallet right now, you would see the money I have in there is organized, with the bills and going the right direction. I know that sounds a little anal, but I've always had the belief that when you respect money, money will respect you. And I always think it's important to have that in the back of your mind. If you're throwing money in your pocket, I told you the story about my friend who hired an organizer, and she said, when they went into just one closet and found old birthday and Christmas cards, she found $400 she didn't know she had. Again, that to me is just being unorganized, and she would be the first one to tell you how unorganized she was. She's gotten a lot better, though. So if you're not good at doing it, maybe you need to think about hiring someone that can get you on track. Again, set your bills up on auto pay. Again, if you are not one that receives a consistent amount in your paycheck and you're in sales and maybe you get paid once a month, I understand that, but maybe there is a way to set up your calendar to remind you to get those paid so you don't get late charges, you don't get interest on your credit cards, you get them paid off. And again, grab one of those 3x5 business cards and just jot down or log into your credit card and just make note of what that bill's going to look like at the end of the month so that you set that money aside in your checking account to actually pay that. So put it down like you would pay your car payment or your mortgage or whatever. Just keep track of it. It will keep you on track, and it will also give you a good snapshot into where your money's going. So it's very, very powerful to do that. Try to get in the habit of saving your money. I know a lot of people, they get a little money, it burns a hole in their pocket. And, I'm trying to get them to understand, how about you take that money, have that money make money for you, whether you put it into an interest-bearing account, you put it into an annuity, or there's a couple of different strategies. I'll do a whole show about that, on what you can do with that money. But have that money earn you money, and then maybe take a little bit to spend. But try to get yourself in the habit of not having money burn a hole in your pocket. Can take some discipline, but it can be done. And I promise you, you will, fall in love with the idea of watching your money grow. Get excited about that. Don't get excited about the new dress or the new pair of shoes. Get excited about that money making you money. Like, for example, right now, the company I work for, we're offering, and this might be a little bit of a self-plug, but right now we're offering an 11% premium enhancement bonus. So for example, I had one client roll an annuity that was $120,000. He rolled it over. He immediately captured a cool little north of $13,000. Free money, absolute free money. So fall in love with the idea of having your money make you money before you spend that money. So take your money, make more money with it, and then spend a little bit of your money. I understand you need to pay your bills, but I know if you sat down and surgically went through your finances, you would find money to save, invest, whatever you end up doing with it, as opposed to just blowing the money. And then, I was talking to someone the other day and she was like, oh my God, I go paycheck to paycheck. I can't live like this. So an appointment has been scheduled. We're going to go through that. Now, I'm not a financial planner. I'm just applying these simple principles that I apply to myself that have really, have really transformed the way I think about money and the way I do things. And I'm just trying to teach people this strategy to help them get their finances organized. So I'm going to do a whole show about some of the options you have to earn money with that. There's a couple of different strategies that I use, and I'm going to go through those in another whole podcast. But today, I want to stick to the organization. But those things with your finances, those little things that I just talked about, you would be surprised what an impact, just on the coffee alone, the impact it would have on your finances and getting yourself organized. Okay, let's talk about your house. There's so many ways to get rid of some of the things that you're sitting on. Closets full of stuff you no longer use, attics full of stuff you no longer use, basements, garages, drawers, closets. Look under the bed how many storage containers you have under there with stuff you simply do not use anymore. Get rid of it. Keep the stuff you want, but really just try to tackle one thing at a time and really try to get yourself looking at the clutter around. So before you can clean the clutter up, you really kind of need to take an inventory of what you have. So try to go through your drawers, your closets, and really take a hard, honest look at what you're looking at and ask yourself if you need all this. Because I will tell you that once you start living with less, you will be surprised how much more you have and how much more calmer you will feel. Clutter creates chaos. Chaos creates unorganization. They all kind of tie into the same thing. And I think if you could really get yourself on track with that, you would be surprised the collateral benefits you would receive by getting yourself organized that way. So really think about, just maybe taking a weekend. I like to do it when the weather starts to turn cold, and I like to do it at the end of the winter. Really like to go through things and take an inventory of what I no longer need and pitch it. Whether I take it to a consignment shop, I happen to own a resale shop, so clothing and shoes and that type of thing. I have a great venue for that. But there's apps, Poshmark.com. You can go on there, download the app. You can, within probably 30 seconds, have something listed. Super easy. You take a QR code to the post office. They scan it. You drop it into one of those Tyvek priority envelopes, and out the door it goes. It's so simple. There's really no excuse. If you don't want to do it, find someone that will do it for you and maybe share the money with them. But a lot of the stuff that you have that you're no longer using, you can turn it into cash. Trust me, I do it all the time. So that's just talking about some of the things. By the way, Mercari, Facebook Marketplace, those are also other good avenues to get rid of some of your things. And you can turn those unwanted pre-loved items into cash. Maybe you're carrying a little credit card debt you want to get rid of. That would be a great way of paying that down. So definitely look at that and see if you can turn some of the clutter into cash and pay down some of that debt. All right, the other thing I want to talk about is our vehicles. I think we spend a lot of money on cars, and I think the resale value, I know every car I've ever traded in, I've gotten top dollar for it because I keep my cars absolutely impeccably clean. It's a great, habit to get into. Most of the car washes now offer free vacuums. When I fill up my car once a week, I immediately drive across the parking lot, vacuum my car, run it through the car wash. I like to keep my car clean. I feel like when I have clients coming into my car, employees, whomever, I never want to give the appearance that I am unorganized and I'm a slob. So I would never want that appearance. So quite easy. And again, little baby steps every week or every day in keeping things clean and organized in the long run keeps you extremely organized. There's no reason to have half the contents of your home into your car. You don't need it. So when you gas up, get the trash out of there, wipe the dashboard down, go through and vacuum it, run it through the car wash. Great habit to get into, because when you turn that car in or you go to sell it, you will make more money on that vehicle by keeping it clean. Ask anybody in the car industry. They will verify what I told you. All right, we've talked about finances, our home, our car. What else? What about keeping our relationships and our friendships and all of our day-to-day stuff nice and organized? Do you ever make plans and a week later when someone reminds you have made those plans and you did not write it down or you did not put it into your calendar and you have that anxiety of how you're going to get out of it? Easily avoidable. Do not sign up for things you do not want to do. If someone asks you to dinner or to go somewhere or plan a trip or whatever, and it's not something in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, I'll agree to it. I'll figure out how to get out of it. You know what? Do them and yourself a favor by not committing to it to begin with. If you don't want to do it, just tell them you don't want to do it. You know what? Not my thing. I'm really not up to it. I'm really busy right now. If you want to get on a call Tuesday night and we can talk on the phone, that would be great, but I really don't have time. You create more anxiety in your life by agreeing, people-pleasing, and doing things and agreeing to do things that you really don't want to do. So get in the habit of only signing up for things that you want to do. I have more respect for people that say no to me than I put them on the calendar and then I find out, the day, an hour before, the day before, yeah, that's not going to work for me because I've carved out that time. Your time is one commodity you can't make more of. So why commit to things you really don't want to do? You don't need to do that. You really do not need to do that. So before, really think about it. That sounds like a lovely idea. I would love to have dinner there. But let me think about it. Let me see if this is going to work on my schedule, and I will get back to you. Please get back to them and let them know either way. But don't sign up and commit to something knowing full well you have no intention of going, and you're going to call them the day before, an hour before, the morning of, and say, that's just not going to work for me. Don't just get in the habit of not doing that. You're creating unorganization for them. and it's making you unorganized. Because in the back of your mind, you're not going to commit to something else, or maybe you will. Why do the mental gymnastics on that? Just say you don't want to do it. Much easier, much cleaner, much simpler. And in the long run, I think people would have more respect for you if you do it that way. Let me look at my schedule. I will get back to you one way or another, and a simple text will do. I'm sorry, that will not work for me. I would love to meet you. I'll meet you at 6:00 at wherever. So just think about what you're doing and what you're signing up for. A lot of us have gotten in the habit of being people pleasers because it sounds good at the moment. I don't know what the addiction is to us wanting people to like us. We all want to be liked. I'm not really where I'm going with that. But it's almost like an addiction sometimes. And we feel like if we commit to doing things or we agree to do things, in the end, I honestly don't know if it changes that person's opinion of you. I actually would have more respect if someone said, I really don't want to do that. Sounds like a great idea. Not my jam. Don't want to do it. But good luck. Have a great time. And maybe we can get together and do something else. How people feel about you is really none of your business. And I'm all for keeping your circle extremely small because at the end of the day, I think that's what's important. Again, this is a strategy that I incorporate. Doesn't necessarily mean it might work for you. But I do believe when we commit to things, when we agree on things, or we structure our life in a manner that goes against how we internally really feel, I believe it causes unorganization because you have things on your calendar you really don't want to do, and then you spend time trying to get out of it. So just as a rule of thumb, just don't agree to do it to begin with. I promise you this strategy will help you in ways you cannot imagine. So just a way of organizing yourself through your finances, through your relationships, how to keep your house in order, how to keep your car in order. Same thing with your job. Try to keep yourself organized. Try to keep a list of what you need to accomplish. Accomplish those tasks right out of the gate at the start of the day. I do it every night, make my list. I tackle the stuff I don't like to do most first, and the rest of the day is clear sailing. And it's a strategy that has worked for me for decades. So if you have any comments or questions about some of the information, or you would like to get on a strategy call with me, definitely reach out to me. You can text me at 413-374-2100. We can do it either in person, or if that doesn't work, I definitely can schedule a Zoom call with you, and I can help you personally start to develop some of these strategies to get yourself going and get your life untangled and back to prosperity and calmness and, really enjoying your life, because time is one of those commodities that we can never make more of. At the end of the day, I always say, thank you for whatever the date is, whatever the year is, that day is gone. I will never experience that day again. I never want to look back at a day and thought, what a waste. So organization is the key to that. All right, everybody, you've been listening to Elevating with Marcia. I'm your host, Marcia Hawkins. Tune in again. I've got some great shows on tap. Until then, make it a great week.